You have all this. This is our meeting dates. Our next meeting is April 25th, so 2 weeks from today, right here in this room. Dinner at 5:30. We'll start at 6. Here's our agenda for today. Just a really quick review. We're going to develop the belief statements. We're going to talk that out a little bit more. We're going to look at some AISD data just to get us more fully informed. You know, part of the process of strategic planning is just getting you informed, right? Helping you paint the picture of what is Abilene like right now. What are the things going on here that we should know about? That's the student panel. What are the students thinking in Abilene? We're going to look at some data, just kind of a 30,000-foot view of data. You have your own personal filter because you have children, or you're a teacher, or you're a principal, or you're a community member, and you hire these these students maybe as a business owner or something in business, or you're connected with higher ed. So you have your own filter too. So we just want to continue to paint the picture. I came across this. This one is harder to see on the big screen, but you might be able to see it over here. I just want you to talk about it at your table for a minute to get our brains working tonight. It says this: no amount of tweaking or modifying the current, industrial era system will fulfill our vision of all children learning and thriving to their full potential. No amount of tweaking of the current system, which is what? Class periods, isolated subjects, a lot of remediation, a lot of tutoring, a lot of standardized tasks, a scope and sequence, standard assessments, everybody doing the same thing at the same time in the same way. The current system, no amount of tweaking of the current industrial era system will fulfill our vision of all children learning and thriving to their full potential. Talk at your table. Is that true? Or is that not true? Because that impacts our work. Are we tweaking the system? Or are we really, strategic plan, a different type of system in terms of our strategic priorities? Talk about that at your table. I listened to a couple of the conversations. So I'm interested to hear a couple of thoughts that you have about this. In terms of tweaking the current system or building a new system, because we have limitations, right? Nobody's going to dump a load of money on us every year for the rest of our lives that will allow us to do a lot of new and different and better things necessarily, right? We have to use our money that we have maybe differently, but we're not going to get an influx of money. The state is not going to say, okay, high school students don't need to get 26 credits in a pathway, right? I mean, they may say that, but they're not saying that right now. So we have limitations on what we can do in terms of building a new system. But I'm interested to hear, just for the benefit of the group, a couple of thoughts that you guys talked about in terms of tweaking no amount of tweaking the system will get us out of the industrial era system so that all children can learn and thrive to their full potential. Talk to me.
You didn't give us enough time to debate the topic.
Would you like 3 or 4 more minutes? I'm a good listener. No, Seaton, he waved me off. Okay. 2 hours goes by fast for me. I don't know about for you, but it goes by fast for me. Give me some of your thoughts. Yeah.
I think the kids had in terms of their vision, in terms of each of them liking groups and group efforts, and where they prefer a group versus individual, that seems to be kind of outside the system. Their talking is sort of outside. Their ideal is outside the system. I think what we're talking about here in terms of visions seem to be outside the system. We all want like an ideal thing. She mentioned it takes participation on willingness on all parts. So how that will merge, in the end, as it runs through the chute, I don't know. But we have goals, I think. We're talking about goals that are outside the system.
Right. I'm going to interpret what you said. The kids really talked about enjoying the social aspect of learning, right? They talked a lot about group work, and they preferred. Now, is that a typical group? One might argue. We asked them. They said yes. doesn't matter. These 12 said that they really liked learning socially in groups. They liked the things that they learned beyond the content in terms of skills and problem solving and teamwork and collaboration and all of that, which is not something necessarily that schools have put a premium on in terms of the system of schools. So you're saying maybe there can be some tweaks to build that collaborative spirit, to prioritize that. Okay? Somebody else?
Well, I feel like I agree with the statement, and that there is no amount of tweaking or modifying the current state that we're in that is going to make all kids learn. But I also don't know, I mean, we can be as innovative as we want to. I don't know that there is a system or a model that we can come up with that is going to make all kids learn. I think that that's a great goal, a great aspiration, but I feel like it's an aspiration, it's not a realistic one. But I do think that there are, like you're saying, in figuring out what is going to meet more of our kids' needs, because that's realistic. If
Okay.
that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
I was telling my group that I read a quote today that said, student outcomes won't change until adult behaviors change. And I think that's really true. And so I think we tweak and modify until, and the pendulum switches, and we tweak and modify over here, we tweak and modify over here, and we're still getting what we have because we need to turn it over.
I think about this a lot in most of the work that I do. A reform system is better tutoring, better intervention, better remediation. A transform system is something where you're building on student strengths. You are valuing student choice and student voice and the autonomy and empowerment of teachers. So those are two really, really different approaches to school, right? And so
I think it's designed to drive creativity down and not creativity up. And I think that's a big problem in today's world. We're changing way too fast, and we're focused on.
So I'm going to take that and give an idea, and then I'm going to get another statement. Let's just say that as a strategic priority, we said we wanted to really value student voice in the educational process. Here's a way that you could do that has generally not been done in education. When you do professional development, have a student there. Now, it may not work with first graders, but I've seen it work with fourth and fifth graders. You'll have a student at your professional development that sits at each table and takes the idea and helps the teacher process the ideas. And honestly, you're building another level of accountability into what you're doing because you have the end user there saying, that's not what we talked about, Ms. Jones, right? You gave me another packet. The one thing I left with the other day is packet should be outlawed, from the student's perspective anyway, right? You gave me another packet. That's not what we said we were going to do. So I'm not saying that's a good idea. I'm saying it is an idea that some school districts have done to change their staff development where student voice is valued in a very real way.
I'm just curious, through the years, what?
Well, I think over the years we discovered that we weren't educating all students. We were only educating the students who wanted to be educated and whose parents expected them to be educated, and oftentimes that fell along poverty lines. The poor stayed poor by design, more or less. And so as we progressed socially as a nation, that every student deserves that opportunity for the American dream, then every student needs a high school diploma. And so it's not okay for students to drop out. And then college and career became the expectation for everybody, which I think we would all say, maybe that's not a very realistic thing either, but who decides? Can you decide in 8th grade you're not going to college? No, I'm glad nobody decided that for my son. right? He was not a stellar student. He's a nice kid, not a stellar student. But he has a college degree. He's a doctor. He's a surgeon. So ask a lot of questions if you're going to have surgery in Temple, right? Because I promise you, he was not a great student, but he is cutting people open, right? And fixing them. And so, so where do you draw the line? Well, we can't decide that. But to answer your question, I think as a society, we said all kids deserve the opportunity. All right. Ryder? And then,
Saul can go first. He had his hand up.
go ahead.
I raised my hand.
Yes, you did. I appreciate that.
Somebody made a comment to me recently because there was a conversation of our education system. And somebody else kind of said, agreed with them. They said, it's worked for me. And I'm trying to remember who that was, but it was a successful person who made it. So why do we think what we have is, they're so wrong? So you've got people thinking on that end. We went through, quite a few of us went through the system, and we would say we've reached our potential. Some may not, but I think most would say they would. And then you've got, on the other spectrum, those who say, throw it out. I mean, just let's just do something totally different. And so I think it's two ends that are difficult to reconcile.
Yep.
And that's important. And so I think when you look at it from that way, it's not a privilege, it's not a right that you have, it is a responsibility. Therefore, the adults in the business have to take that responsibility very seriously, that these folks are going to be running this country
Right.
economically and in a lot of other ways. And so,
Socially, politically, right.
right,
In all
so
ways.
that-
Business.
That is the ultimate accountability, I think, for us all. But we
Okay.
are teaching kids that we would not, that we have students in our classroom that 10, 15, 20 years ago were not in our classroom. And that's why we think they have all changed. And really, our kids haven't changed that much. We've just, the types of kids that we are keeping in schools
Keep.
are different. And they're the ones that maybe don't want to learn. But we have taken some of those and gotten them to want to learn.
Absolutely.
Not all of them. And so the question is, do you tweak that or do you transform that? And how do you do that with the kids that do want to learn and take those kids to another level? So it's taking everybody that's here to a different
Right.
tier each time.
Expectation needs to change, not to a four-year college, but to improve their ability to advance their ability, not necessarily to a four-year degree, which is not needed in today's world. And we need to be cognizant of that, and find their passion, like we talked last week about passion.
So, this is great. You're setting us up for success. Ryder?
Can you go back to the quote slide?
I can.
So the comment that we made here at Octave was the emphasis on the third line, the last word, all. Fulfill our vision of all children learning. And that's kind of what we've been talking about here in the whole room now. The system, and I'll say that we all were educated through, there is a thread of benevolence now has been woven into our fabric, that we are expected to reach every kid no matter where they are. And 15, 20 years ago, maybe not necessarily the case. I don't recall off the top of my head when free and appropriate public education went into effect. When was that?
Well, it's been in effect for a while, but the accountability.
It's been there, but has it been implemented? And you have to define the word appropriate.
Really, in the 1980s, when the current modern educational era started of educating all students in a standardized way.
And that's what we talked about. The pendulum has swung so far toward standardized testing. It almost seems like if we're going to, it depends on how we're supposed to take this quote as an absolute truth and absolute untruth, or is there somewhere in between? Right, if we take that as an absolute truth and this is our goal to go towards, then that's the other end of the pendulum swing is the way I see it. Whereas right now, everything's standardized testing and that's all we go towards. And people say, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, but people celebrate, the passing rates of the STAR test, that's the minimum standards. Why are we celebrating minimum standards? And I don't know how to celebrate. Like last night, we celebrated some of the successes of kids who competed in competitions. and that's not necessarily academic.
So what is, this is a rhetorical question, but what is data that you could collect as a district that would be meaningful beyond test data, whether it's ACT, SAT, STAR, whatever? What is data that you could collect that would be meaningful, that would drive conversations, that you could share with parents, that a teacher could use, that would really be meaningful data for the student? One of the things that's clear from our conversation so far is content is not king. Skills, character, values are up there with content. I think we would all agree kids need to know how to add, subtract, multiply, divide, know civics, all those things, read, write. But that's not all they have to be able to do, right? So what data, we collect a lot of this data. What data over here could we collect that would really drive conversations and drive some of the work that we do? So you don't have to answer that right now. Projected that there would be driverless cars 10 years ago, 5 years ago, right? They're legal in certain places, right? They're driverless cars. There's somebody in the car being driven, but they're happening. Robotics, think about the world of robotics in terms of automation. There are things happening out there that are happening at the speed of light, right? A couple of people, when we showed this sign, said this is kind of where education is, this factory model. How do we move to a true learning organization?
Well, and Dr. Folsom, one other observation to maybe tie into that. Until our society begins to value education and teachers are able to spend more time educating than parenting because we're too lazy to do it at home, I think that we're always going to have that struggle. So to me, it's not just an educational structure, it's a community challenge that you've got to take responsibility for your kid. And here's why I say that. My wife was a substitute teacher back in North Carolina where we came from. She spent more time addressing the emotional needs and what happened at home yesterday, and the fact that the kid hasn't eaten in 3 days, than she ever did helping to teach the classes.
The idea that all of us are hardwired to get angry, to be sad, to be joyful. Only a few people, not everyone, no one is hardwired to show humility or to forgive or to be empathetic or to have optimism or compassion. You have to be taught those things. So that kind of gets at what the heart of what you're talking about is that schools certainly take on the responsibility of helping people in their emotional development, in their social development, in their behavioral development, not just their academic. What do we have to believe to push a transformed idea forward instead of a reformed idea? I just want to remind you that our belief statements have to they have to provide us leverage, right? They cannot be weak, milquetoast, whatever you want to call it. They can't be things like all students can learn. They have to be things like innovation and creativity is the core of the modern classroom, because that gives me leverage. If I go into a teacher's classroom or if I go into a principal and say, can all students learn? You can say yes. But if I go in and say, is innovation the core of every classroom here? That's a different question. That is very different in terms of leverage that you have as a teacher, and that empowers teachers. It causes me to ask different questions, right? So we're looking for leverage as a system to drive behavior. So our next task is to take the belief statements that you guys have written. You have them in front of you. If you don't, there's extra copies here. And to push forward on identifying the belief statements for Abilene. Now here's the deal, we only want 4 to 6 of them. So far, there's a lot of carryover in these, but 8 groups and each one has 3 to 6, 7. So we have a lot of belief statements. What I want you to do individually for a few minutes is to with these belief statements and begin to find common themes, begin to find common ideas that will drive action that are with the work that we've been talking about. So provide leverage for the district to move forward related to skills, not just content, student strengths and passions, meaning and relevance for students, student voice, and the list could go on. But in this transformed system, with major modifications maybe with the old system, or even blowing up the old system, what provides us leverage? So if you would work alone for a few minutes and begin to identify common themes and ideas, and begin to make some notes related to belief systems, we are going to work individually, then in groups, and then we're going to make some proposals in terms of beliefs in just a few minutes. Go stick it on the wall over there, right? Go put it on the wall over there. Yes. Where are you stuck?
We are struggling.
Oh, good.
Putting things into words.
Okay.
We have good ideas.
All right. So, okay.
We don't know. We saw
So-
patterns. We
Okay.
have trouble with words.
So what are, like, give me some of your ideas.
So the first, like, what we feel like is the core theme here.
What will drive behavior of a teacher, of a principal, of an educational aide, the educator? What will drive their behavior if relationships are just a foundational piece of success? No learning happens outside of a significant relationship, generally speaking. So if I want you to see the significance of the relationship, what is it that I have to believe? And so if I'm going to care, and I believe that's a great word, if I'm going to care for you, what does that mean that I do for you? I express care, I express empathy, I express high expectations. All of those things are kind of wrapped up in this relationship piece. So I would kind of choose one of those to kind of go with. You know, you probably can't choose all of them, but I like the high expectations as if I truly have a relationship with you, I have very high expectations for you, right? I don't just like you. In fact, I may not even like you that much, right? But I have very high expectation for you. I care about you as a person. I want the best for you. And so our personalities may not even jihad very well together, right? But so I believe teachers must express care for students. I believe teachers should, so we talked about express care, show empathy towards students. I believe teachers should hold high expectations. That one's kind of, I don't like that one very much, because what does that mean? But empathy I can define. That means I'm putting myself in your shoes, right? Care, I believe teachers should serve students. You know, it's not, I serve you. How can I help you? So that's the idea behind it, is what does it look like?
Okay.
So when you express care for a student, or when you build a relationship with a student, what do you do? It's hard to describe.
Yeah, it is hard to describe. I put myself out there. I try to connect with that student on their level with an interest, maybe a shared interest, or find out what their...
We believe teachers should connect with students on their level. I'm not saying that's great. I'm saying that's the idea. Mm-hmm. It's more than have a good relationship. Well, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. Connect with you. Know something about you. I always think about if I'm going to really have a relationship with you, I got to know something about you besides your name, right? I got to know like what kind of makes you tick. What do you like? What do you dislike? What's your brother and sister like? What's your family life like? Now, the challenge in that comes in when you're teaching 150 ninth graders. How do you do that? Well, I don't know, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
We try.
Yeah. And if I'm having this conversation with you, this is our belief statements, as a teacher, you kind of know who you really need to connect with. You know which students are connecting and are okay, but there's a group of 10 or 20 or 30 you have throughout the course of a day who could really use that fellowship with you on a professional basis, that ear, listening.
Well,
I mean,
there's
listening
the
is a
kids that
great...
seek you out, and there's the kids that don't. I mean, you have to seek them.
So, what does it look like? Your idea, what does it look like? That's what my extended question for you. And if you can't get there, just put your ideas down. I'm good with that too, okay? Good with that too.
We're like struggling.
What does it look like? Everybody does. Because we're used to the left side, we're not used to the right side.
About partnerships and relationship, and so I have a little bit of problem with just saying a strong relationship between teacher and student.
What does that mean?
So that doesn't mean enough. to
What
me.
does a good relationship look like? If you were to describe a teacher,
We said respect.
Mutual respect.
love that.
Listening and
Respectful relationship and
Teachers will listen. We believe teachers will listen to students. That's far different than relationships. That is a piece of relationship.
Relationships was like, I was like, I don't like that.
That's the challenge of this. Old school is relationships are foundational. Okay, yes.
But what about it?
But that puts all the
And
burden
remember
on the
kids
student to have the
talked about
relationship.
the respect of their teacher.
Yes.
meant a lot.
Teachers will respect students.
the student voice.
We're speedy.
I know, I appreciate that about you. I want y'all to be thinking about, because you got one school person, university, right? Cisco, correct? And TSTC, and then business owner. Exploring the back to what you said, that we have the expectation now. We all talk about in kindergarten even, where are you going to go to college, right? First grade, where are you going to go to college? Where are you going to go to college? What is the balance for that, so that you don't track kids into not going to a four-year university, but that you provide another pathway for them where they don't have to feel like they need to go to that to be successful. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So what does that look like in a school? Because truly, my son in 8th grade, I mean, he was not college material. He came into his own his junior and senior year, and then in college he really expressed. So I'm glad I didn't say, Scott, don't go to college. On the other hand, as a father, I'm thinking, do you need to go? It's my money, right? And what will be the best thing? So, but obviously I'm glad I sent him to college because he came into his own. So that becomes the push and pull on this thing. And you have your own kids, your own experience, kids you see. But as we just think about strategic priorities for Abilene, what does that look? Because that is an issue for everyone. What does that look like? How do you do that? What do you do and say to kids about college, work, community college, technical college, post-secondary education?
Well, if you create pathways, that's what it's all about. You made that comment in the first meeting. You create a pathway. I'm looking at automotive technicians, okay? And we're trying to create a pathway for technicians to bring people in freshman year into high school, freshman year, talk to them about automotive technicians. But at the same, more than that, talk to them about the automotive industry, so that if they come in, they don't like putting a motor together, but they like
categorizing all the parts. Then they can move it, they can offshoot to a parts person, or they can offshoot to a service advisor or a service manager or some
Sales, whatever, yeah.
where they have the ability to get on a pathway, but it has exit points.
Yeah.
Where they can make a choice. If you needed 2 years worth of college, all of a sudden you get passion. I think it goes back to passion. If you find the passion for a student, they may go 4 years to college. You know, because they love it. They may not think they could, you know, but then all of a sudden they find something, they become good at it. Man, I tell you, when you find somebody that has a passion for something, then they can motivate you.
Yeah.
There's a math becomes relevant. If you're an artist, you want to be an artist, right? But you want to create a sculpture that's three-dimensional and it has some volume, or then you got to figure out a mathematical formula or something. You're going to go to geometry and figure that out because you want to know.
So
Because you have to.
you talk about passion all the time, and I love that coming from an entrepreneur.
Oh, so much to say about so the
And you're just now talking?
No, I've been talking. I will talk.
Okay.
I will talk about it. I have so much to say. But I told them the idealistic side of me is like, this is all really great, and we can the hearts in this room, I feel like we're all on the same page. We're tracking. We want to blow it up and do something different.
Right.
But the realist, pessimist side is like, well, how do we do that So I'm anxious to see what that's going to look like with state, federal requirements that are put upon us. However, she was mentioning that there are teachers that are doing it at every campus. There are teachers that are able to live with those, and then are doing something innovative and different.
You're right.
So what if we had a panel of those one week? Because I know Dr. Dukes could name the ones, and we're on PTO at our school where we have lots of kids. We can name the ones at that campus, and then throughout.
That's a great idea.
We could just hear from them, how do you balance that? How do you do that? Or would they feel safe to say that
Would
in this
they?
district?
Yeah, I don't know. I
They
would
wouldn't
like to
2 years
think.
ago,
Well, that's true. That is true.
but maybe now. Or it could be anonymous. I don't know. But I'd love to hear from those people. How do you do that? Teach us.
Okay. But you're absolutely correct. There are teachers doing it,
Right.
And they're doing it even without permission, right? They're just saying this is right.
They're like, here's
Right.
following all the rules.
Right.
We're really waiting on some groups to turn
That's
into
what we
work.
need to find.
I think
ready.
I think we're.
1 minute. 1 minute call. Yeah. Here are the themes. These were my themes. Hopefully they aligned with some of yours anyway. Relationships, strengths, student voice, individualized, skills. Education's not static. Should be creative, collaborative, and social. Passion should be developed. Relevance. Students are valuable. Doug.
Where does accountability come in?
Accountability is not so much seen in the belief statements. We will hold people accountable for the work associated with the belief statements. So, and I'm thinking of accountability not in terms of state accountability or federal accountability, but accountability of a work environment that creates the conditions for students to develop their passions, for students to learn at deep levels, and for students to kind of figure out who they are. Now, we also know, right, that we're not trying to get a ninth grader to decide if they're going to be an engineer. But we want them to start developing what do they like? What floats their boat? What gets them going, right? So this is not about pigeonholing you into something at an early age. It's about the development of passions through relevant experiences, meaningful experiences.
We didn't use the words like and fun very often.
Play.
Or play, yeah. But over here, students learn best when school doesn't feel like school.
Yeah.
There's an element of fun. If we're not careful, we miss.
Yeah, great point. Great point. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I circle, and I don't know if this is really a belief, it's may come in later, but it's the second to last bullet point on the sheet of paper. I think whatever direction we start going in, whatever beliefs we write, whatever model we decide, if we don't keep that bullet point in mind and have at our foundational core that we need to be supporting, because we're talking about shifting the mindset and changing our way of thinking. And if we don't support and train our teachers in whatever we decide, no matter what we do, we're not going to be successful.
So this idea that we can believe all these things, but unless we develop, train, support teachers, then it might be fairly useless. So one of the things I believe is that we have to quit doing professional development the way traditionally we've done it in the past, and that is roll the same thing out to all teachers at the same time in the same way, and then expect them to use it and believe in it. So the question for those responsible becomes, okay, so if we believe this and we start developing some strategic priorities over this, how do we fill the toolbox of teachers in a meaningful way so that teachers will take it and be able to use it? I don't think it is rolling it out in the same way to the same people at the same time and then expecting them to say, oh yeah, okay, I got it. I think it's more of who's interested in this and taking those people and developing those. Because here's the deal. If you try to roll something out to everybody at the same time, it starts strong and then it fades. But if you start small and grow it, it will get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it will start to support itself over time. So, great point. Yes, the second bullet point, or the second from the last. Okay? So what I'm thinking is this, that an outcome from our beliefs is exactly what you're talking about. So an outcome from our beliefs, if we believe that developing passions in students is a critical thing, you can't do that outside of partnering with parents, outside of getting some business partners and community partners in here to come in and figure out and work with kids. So I think that an outcome of some of these things is exactly what you're talking about. So I don't know that it has to be point blank in the belief statements. I do think that in 2017, where the exchange of ideas is so rapid, you go on Twitter, you can get 30 ideas in 10 seconds, right? Or LinkedIn, and you can get 14 articles from business leaders just immediately. So when the exchange of ideas is so rapid, you can't leave out parents, partners, and so forth to develop these ideas of what does it mean. So if I'm going to develop passions in your kids, man, I got to know something about moms and dads too, and I got to bring them in. Or if I'm going to develop relevant experiences for students, I better bring in an auto technician and find out what would be a relevant experience. What do you do at your work? And how might I translate that into a math class or a science class or an English class or a career tech class or all of the above, right? So I think it's an outcome of it.
There was one statement out there that didn't get a lot of votes, but the authentic learning experiences, I think that's when you bring the outside and let them make connections to the business world, to the arts, to everything.
I think authentic and relevant, there might not be synonymous, but they're close. What does that mean? What is our priority? What is a strategic priority for us? What are some strategic priorities for us as a school system? What does that mean for teachers? What does that mean for students? What does that mean for parents? So I just want that to be bouncing around. Now, we still have 5 more meetings, so we're good. We're good. We got a lot of time to talk and cuss and discuss and figure things out from here. We made significant progress tonight. We'll come back in 2 weeks and make significant more, and we're going to start here. We're going to look at a little data related to Abilene ISD in terms of SAT, teachers, higher education, the last STAR results that we have. I mean, you're going to have to get up and come look at this one, but this is a chart with attendance. And then we're going to talk about some strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But we're going to get our belief statements done and then move into that next piece of it. Okay? Like all good teachers do, I'm letting you out 6 minutes early. Y'all are awesome. Thank you. Hey, 2 weeks. Bring anybody that's not here is not on the committee, but y'all are great and you're doing good work. So thank you.